Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. How is everyone doing? My one viewer in chat, Tremendous Pain, what up? Yo yo yo, how you doing, bro? Oh god. The rhyme just made it ever the more cringe. But hey, we're back 2 days in a row. Yesterday had a nice little Minecraft stream. Just eased my way back into streaming. And today I'm going to try to talk a little bit about healthcare. So we will see how that goes. I think people are going to disagree with me. I'd assume they would. I hope they do. Yeah, just because, I don't know. I used to be an objectivist. Most of my community is objectivist, and I kind of want to look into doing a little learning on how some other countries out here are doing healthcare. So, particularly, I plan on looking into a little bit about Singapore and Switzerland, because both of these countries tend to have from the research I've done so far, tend to have a fairly decentralized system. And both of their systems work very well. And they also both require a lot of out-of-pocket costs. So personally, I don't think that healthcare needs to be free for it to be good and for everybody to have access to it. I think we can allow for pricing and we can allow for markets to work because markets tend to be a really efficient way of allocating things. However, there are certain issues that come up whenever you deal with healthcare. One such issue would be just the fact that if you're not able to pay for healthcare, you might just die, basically, is a big concern that a lot of people have. The main idea is basically you get in a car accident, something crazy happens, you go to the hospital, and then all of a sudden you just don't have the money to pay for it, which happens in the US, and a lot of people want to avoid that. And it's difficult to do without just making it entirely free for everybody. So I would be interested in figuring out a way to solve that. Someone's saying that I need to update my Discord link. I might need to look into that, because if that is broken, that is not a good thing at all. Okay, let us look at that. Tremendous Pain said looking fresh. Thank you, bro. I started trying to do the suit thing now. Let me check this Discord, make sure that's actually working. It says the Discord, I clicked the Discord invite in the description and it looks like it's working, so I'm not sure what you mean. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what you mean, but that should be down in the description. I just clicked it, it worked for me. Hopefully it works for you as well, I don't know. Gosh, just trolling me with that. And then he asked, what changed your mind on objectivism? I think a lot of it has just been kind of growing up and realizing that I don't want to be locked into a specific perspective. I think it's useful to take different things from all sorts of perspectives. Most issues, it's not just this black and white issue where I can just have this ideology that has all the answers to a problem. There's pros and cons to any sort of policy that you're going to enact. There's pros and cons to capitalism. There's pros and cons to socialism. So I think the best sort of system is one that tries to take what you can from each thing and puts it together in a way that makes sense, that isn't contradictory, because I don't believe that you can just contradict basic principles. I still hold basic principles, like I believe in freedom, believe in human happiness. Those are things that I want a government to promote, but I don't think that you can do that just through one framework, one ideology, because there's pros and cons to almost everything. To me, it says that it's invalid, maybe because you're already part of it. Redemption arc, Tiago says. Yeah, it's going to be a redemption arc, but we will see what happens from here. Maybe I could go. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of Destiny. If you guys watch him, you guys definitely know who he is. Recently got banned on Twitch apparently, and yeah, I don't know. I've sort of realized that it's just not the best way going forward to care more about ideological purity than actual practical solutions. Yeah, there's pros and cons to every policy, as I explained. Certain things, and I think I was really intent when I was an objectivist on trying to make sure that I show that there's no problems with capitalism. There's no cons with that. I think in general capitalism is good and it has a lot of, it leads to, it's the best economic system that we have. But there's also cons, and I think there is some role for government to get involved there. I think one particular thing that I would think about was just the concept of taxation. If we can, for example, if we can use taxation to get people to pay less, to give people more freedom, then I feel like that's something that we should do. I care more about freedom than about not violating rights, and I don't think those are the same thing. Tremendous Pain said, "You watched the Destiny versus Nick debate?" I did watch that debate. That's the one that I watched very recently. It's about the Russia situation. I mean, yeah, I feel like I need to do a lot more research on that. I personally think that Russia is definitely in the wrong for invading a sovereign nation. Should the U.S. impose a no-fly zone? I think that's stupid. That's how you get World War III. But I think we should probably support Ukraine. And Russia is definitely not in the right for trying to invade these countries. I think that NATO, the main fear that Russia has about like NATO expansion being the main problem is not a very warranted fear, because NATO has never like attempted to invade a sovereign nation. These nations want to join NATO, so I think we should let them as sovereign nations. The only ideological purity you should care about is the Bible and God. I think that's another ideology that I don't care too much about. Tiago says, "Are you a pragmatist?" Kind of, maybe. I don't know. I still believe in like principles. I still believe like, oh, capitalism is generally a good thing. We should intervene whenever there is like some sort of problem that reduces human freedom. Tremendous Pain, man, you look like I did some years back. It's uncanny. Oh my gosh. It's the NATO invaded Libya. I need to do more research on that. I think I need to research that a little bit more. Because NATO doesn't invade countries with the intent of taking them over, from my understanding. But I don't know. I need to do more research on that particular topic, because I think Libya had an oppressive dictator at the time too, so they were just trying to overthrow him. But I don't know if I would necessarily support or oppose the war in Libya. I don't think there's much evidence either that NATO is trying to gain these countries to eventually invade Russia. These countries want to join NATO. But we're kind of getting on a tangent, because we started talking about objectivism, started talking about Russia, which is not something that I'm the most researched on. I think I need to look more at this healthcare situation. So I think we're going to begin. Let me unmute the desktop. Let's see. So yeah, I think the main thing that I kind of want to talk about today is just going over other healthcare systems, different things that seem to do better than the U.S. Because from my understanding, the U.S. healthcare system, while we have a lot of innovation, there's a huge problem with people just not being able to get healthcare. So I think there's other countries that do it a lot better than us, with a free market approach that I am kind of a fan of. So looking into one such example would be Singapore. Has a very efficient healthcare system. This website just gives a general overview of different things. Switzerland is another one that I want to look into. So yeah, let's jump into that. I decided that I just want to watch videos on them and just kind of learn a little bit more about what each system is about.
On September 6, 2019, the 95-year-old former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, died of cancer. He did not, however, die in Zimbabwe. Instead, Mugabe chose to receive his medical care, as he always did, in Singapore, a whole 5,000 miles.
Okay, but he fucking died. Shithole system. Why? He died in Singapore. There's nothing good about that. Holy shit. Well, garbage system. Time to be done. Bye. Okay, stream ended. Garbage system. No, we'll keep going. We'll see if we'll try to understand this a little better, because, yeah, they are So I guess before we start, I guess I can probably explain a little bit more about why I'm interested in this particular system. We can look at basically their rankings on a lot of these lists. Wikipedia is probably the best place to just like see sources all put together. So you can look at Bloomberg ranked them as the most efficient in the world, first out of 166 countries for healthcare outcomes. Singapore is the fourth healthiest country in the world and first in Asia, ranked first on the Global Food Security Index. That doesn't really have to do with healthcare, but so that's why I'm interested in them. They work hard to try to avoid directly regulating costs. So price controls is something they try to avoid, which I think is generally a good thing.
On September 6th, 2019, the 95-year-old former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, died of cancer. He did not, however, die in Zimbabwe. Instead, Mugabe chose to receive his medical care, as he always did, in Singapore, a whole 5,000 miles or 8,000 kilometers away. Each of his many such trips required no fewer than 10 hours in the air each way, by which time he could have flown anywhere in continental Europe. The African revolutionary was not the only powerful person to seek treatment in the Southeast Asian city-state of just 5 million. So too did the daughter of the Philippines president, the president of Bangladesh, several military leaders of Myanmar, and the former First Lady of Indonesia, to name just a few examples. Heads of state no doubt appreciate Singapore's tight control of the press and lack of protesters, though their first priority is surely the same as its other 500,000 annual medical tourists: to receive what is perhaps the best healthcare on Earth. Today, the average Singaporean...
Oh my god, was it going to pause? So I guess talking about one problem I do have with Singapore is their restriction of personal freedoms. I think they killed drug addicts there. It was the Singaporean leader who would talk about how he was like shooting drug addicts, right? There was some leader who talked about that, and they like to quash protests too, as this video talked about. I'm not a fan of that, but I think economically Singapore consistently ranks really high in economic freedom indexes, and they end up having really good outcomes with healthcare especially. But I think their education system is also fairly strong.
Lives to be an astonishing 83 years old, a full decade longer than the world average, and only slightly behind Switzerland, Macau, Japan, Hong Kong, and San Marino. Another common metric for healthcare quality is the infant mortality rate, at which Singapore is among the best in the world, just 2.1 for every 1,000 live births. Finally, Bloomberg ranked the country second in overall efficiency. These are impressive outcomes on their own, but they become downright amazing when you consider how little they cost. The United States spends about 17% of its GDP on healthcare, making it an embarrassing...
See, this is fucked. I feel like a lot of people consider the US this bastion of capitalist healthcare, but I mean, we spend insane amounts on it because we try to do these weird programs with it and these weird regulations and I don't know. We do it in a very, very inefficient way, which I think is probably the biggest problem with U.S. healthcare. And then we don't even really get much out of it because there's still tons of people dying from not being able to afford health, or going bankrupt because they're not able to afford healthcare, and it's just not the best system. So that's why I'm very interested in looking at other countries and see what they do better.
Outlier even among the most developed nations. The UK, a more representative example, stands at 10%.
Is Singapore's economy 30% public sector? Hold up. Economic Freedom Index rankings. I don't remember what specifically the keywords would be. Let me look at this because... yeah, they're consistently very high up on those rankings. But that'd be interesting to me. Are they actually 30% public sector? Because honestly, I don't necessarily have a problem with that if they still have what would be considered a free economy. But let me look at percent of Singapore economy, public sector. Oh shit. Let me see if I can find it. Public sector by nation. Bet. Where's Singapore? Oh shit, yeah, interesting. I wonder where they're getting that number from. Wait, what is this? Is this what the percentage is? Hold up. What does ILO mean? Oh, I see. Okay. Public sector by sex percentage? What does this even mean? Hold up. Oh god. Okay. I'm struggling to understand what this graph is saying. Oh, I guess, yeah, it's just the percentage, I think. I think the title tells me what it is. Yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. But if they have so much economic freedom, it's interesting that the public sector takes up so much of their economy. It makes me kind of, I mean, it's part of the argument that capitalism might not necessarily be correlated perfectly with economic freedom.
9, and Israel just 8. Singapore, on the other hand, spends just 4% of GDP. This is, in fact...
this is something that I like, because I don't want the government necessarily spending a ton on our healthcare. They can be involved in it, but I would prefer individuals to keep their own money and be able to make their own healthcare decisions, and then that would allow for a lot more competition with healthcare and different things like that. So,
in fact, lower than the minimum recommended by the World Health Organization. On this metric, Singapore is surrounded by poor countries like Sudan, Eritrea, and Madagascar. If you didn't know of its world-class outcomes, you'd assume, based on this number, that it must surely be a struggling backwater, not a thriving global finance hub. If the US spent the same proportion of its GDP on healthcare, it could afford, with those savings, to permanently finance 139 of the world's smallest countries. It could save 3 times the entire cost of the American military. Somehow, Singapore provides the same or even better healthcare than the richest countries in the world, at the cost of the poorest countries in the world. In designing healthcare systems, governments willfully choose at most 2 of the following: price, quality, or equal access.
I feel like I hear a lot of conservatives make this point. Like, I feel like I've heard Ben Shapiro say this before. I don't remember. I haven't watched that dude in so long.
Trade-offs, believing that you can't have it all. Singapore, on the other hand...
It seems like it does make a lot of sense, though. Yeah, because if you want equality of healthcare, but then also, like, very high quality, you're going to have to pay a lot of money to get every single person high quality healthcare. But then if you... Let's think of another combination. Like, if you want equal healthcare at a low price, yeah, you're probably not going to have very high quality healthcare, because you're sacrificing quality to lower the price, most likely, I would assume. But then price and quality, if you have both of those, it's going to be hard to deliver that to every single person at a low price. Yeah, okay.
And seems to have solved this MC Escher level puzzle and delivered all 3. Sponsored by CuriosityStream and Nebula, where you can watch the extended...
Objectivist Zealot says, the problem with healthcare costs are rooted in overspending and price non-disclosure laws, also known as statism. Competition would ensure price disclosure between competing medical institutions. Yeah, I've heard of that problem before, because I think a lot of times, a lot of healthcare costs are just determined through negotiations between insurance companies and the actual hospitals giving them out. So a lot of times the prices that we actually pay, like if you're going and paying out of pocket, it'll be significantly higher than what an insurance company
version of this video. When Singapore gained independence in 1965, healthcare was far from its highest
What up, Chandler?
priority. In the words of its health minister at the time, it ranked at most fifth, after national security, jobs, housing, and education. Facing an uncertain future, and with the country's very existence at stake, the government had no choice but to ration its attention and resources. The US performed its first successful kidney transplant in the early 1950s, but Singapore would have to wait 20 years to do the same. With just 50 specialists for a population of 2 million, it chose to focus first on more pressing issues, like the rampant spread.
Oh, yeah, one of the most interesting things about Singapore to me is how they were so, like, from my understanding, they were so poor back, like, very recently, but they were able to develop so quickly and deliver such good outcomes and, like, economically, healthcare wise, and yeah, all those sort of things.
Spread of tuberculosis and pneumonia. This slow and methodical approach helped the country develop a set of guiding foundational principles which informed its decision-making.
Tremendous pain. I think the concept behind insurance companies regarding healthcare is fairly necessary. Like, the idea of risk pooling is incredibly important to basically offset a lot of the risk that each of us individuals hold. There's a decent, not super huge chance, but there's a possible chance that I get like a car crash or have a heart attack, like right now. Like, that could happen. Not a very good chance. I'm young and healthy, but like, those sort of things can happen. Random chance events can happen. So it's very useful to pool that risk together and make sure that, like, that risk is offset by different people paying for it and all coming together and making sure that there's enough money pooled together to pay off those, like, random chance incidents. Because, like, a 1 in a million shot, or something that happens 1 in a million times a day, happens like 7 billion times, or no, happens 7,000 times a day, because there's 7 billion people in the world, right?
Was still a British colony in 1948 when the English National Health Service was created, it chose a very different path. In fact, if there's one philosophy that defines its national approach to healthcare...
Ooh, objective is zealot. I think you're right in the fact that the U.S. has a very good healthcare system. Like, quality-wise, the issue is not everybody's really able to access that. There's a lot of people that are priced out of the system. So I think we need to come up with a better way of making sure that other people have access to, like, that everybody has access to very high-quality healthcare. Because that's something that everybody needs. Everybody needs healthcare, because we're fragile creatures. We have fairly weak bodies, and we need them to be maintained somehow.
It's a firm and unapologetic rejection of what was perceived as the over-generosity of the British. Believing that the general public was abusing, misusing, and underappreciating government clinics, its first Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, was quick to impose a fee. It was decided that while every citizen would be guaranteed some form of care, nothing would be strictly free, motivating a sense of personal...
I think this is incredibly important, making sure that people have to pay for healthcare. Because when it's completely free, people are incentivized to go in and get healthcare for basically no reason. Like, oh, my stomach hurts a little bit. Let me just go to the doctor real quick, and go waste other people's money, waste time, waste money, waste resources, just dealing with some illusory pain that I made up in my head. That's why, like, if you look at Denmark, let me look at Denmark healthcare wait times, because I looked at this earlier on my phone. So hopefully the Google actually finds it the same thing for me. Yeah, with these measures, waiting times to see specialists are about 60 days. But it can be more, with close to 20% of patients waiting more than 3 months. I wonder how that compares to United States. Because this might get screwed over. Waiting greater than 1 day, about 20. What is the average, though? Is there a good average? A study found that wait times in private sector hospitals range from 16.5 days in New York to 57.33 days in Boston. Oh, Jesus Christ. Some of those are a little bit longer than I thought. Takes most patients an average of 24 days to schedule first-time appointment with a doctor in America. Okay, so that seems like it's an average. I'm kind of just skimming through like the descriptions here. If I was on my own, I'd probably click on each of these and look at them more, but I just want to get a general idea because I'm not trying to waste time.
Personal responsibility. But allergic as the government was to anything resembling welfare, it also had little confidence individuals could be trusted to manage their own healthcare savings. The compromise to this tension was called Medisave.
See, I think that's probably true. I think we probably do need to make sure that people set aside some money for healthcare, because people aren't going to do that necessarily. Like, people will spend their money if they have it a lot of times, because people are not always rational. It sounds really like technocratic for me to say that, but it's true. I think there's some extent to which we need to make sure that people set money aside, or maybe not necessarily. But I think I understand the rationale behind this system.
The British had left Singapore with a compulsory savings account known as the Central Provident Fund. It required employees to deposit 5% of their income, which employers matched, to be withdrawn at retirement. Over the years, Lee raised these contribution rates and introduced several new components.
What does this sound?
Today, the average Singaporean is required to stash away about a third of their income into three accounts.
Money, but
the first,
maybe not,
the
though,
ordinary account, can be used to pay for things like school and housing.
Okay.
A second, special account, is reserved for retirement and merges with the ordinary account at age 55. Finally, the Medisave account can be used for medical care and insurance. In essence, every citizen is required to stash away some money for a rainy day. Most income at the beginning of one's career is directed to the ordinary account, which is one of the reasons so many Singaporeans can afford their own home. As you approach retirement, more and
See, that's interesting. I feel like this sort of thing would help with a lot of different things. It feels like Social Security, but also kind of not, because it's not put into like a general fund, from my understanding. It seems like it's very individualized. So like people will accumulate money over time, and it's their own money, but it's just mandated to be spent on one particular thing, which isn't super unreasonable. I think something like this could have helped us avoid the housing crisis in 2008, because like that crisis was caused by a lot of risky loans being given to low-income people. I don't know how much you guys know about the 2008 housing crisis, but so a lot of that was because of basically people using debt to finance homes when they didn't actually have the money to spend on it. But I think this policy could potentially help with that significantly by making sure that people have enough money to be able to buy a home without all these like people, without everyone over incentivizing housing and trying to get these like very risky loans.
more of your money is sent to Medisave.
But what we're talking about now is this Medisave stuff, which I think is incredibly interesting because people naturally aren't going to want to save their money for healthcare. Like, that's not something that's ever really on my mind when I think about like, oh, what do I want to use my money for? Oh yeah, I got to set some aside just in case I get in a car accident or something like that. It's like, maybe that would be a better thing if I just had that money aside, just taken directly out of my paycheck. Yeah. And Chandler does bring up a good point. I have friends in their 30s who are still forced by their parents to save because they won't themselves. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times when you're younger, it's your brain's not fully developed yet, and a lot of times it's very easy to just want to spend your money on whatever you see and forget about the long-term consequences. There's different sides to this as well, because sometimes it's like, okay, but maybe people should have the freedom to spend that money how they want, because then they could buy more things that they actually want. But it seems like it seems like it'd be useful to set some aside, but I don't know.
And when the government runs a budget surplus, it often simply deposits the difference.
Because any money that is not being put in these savings accounts, like allowing people to have that money, they can only really do something negative with it, and harm their own freedom, essentially, because they can only take away money that should be saved. But I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of making a Social Security argument right now because it's like, should we mandate people to save money when it would be nice for them to be free to just spend it how they like? I don't know.
Directly into these accounts, ensuring it's put to good use. In practice, the system functions neither like American Social Security nor a fully self-owned bank account. It's somewhere in between, which makes it somewhat controversial. On one hand,
I think that's kind of okay though, because Social Security, it feels like this distribution mechanism from young people to old people, and it's not self-sustaining really either. Like, they have to take out a lot of debt to continue paying it out. But
on one hand, the government likes to boast that citizens own their own funds. In some sense, this is true. It's not attached to your employer, and thus doesn't end if you're fired or laid off. The money it contains is completely tax-free and can be willed away like any property at death. It's also guaranteed a minimum competitive interest rate between 2.5 and 5%. On the other hand, critics highlight how restrictive it is. Funds are subject to both a minimum and maximum balance, periodic limits, and deliberately designed not to fully cover any single medical expense, which the government...
See, I wonder how that maximum limit stuff works, because that could be interesting. That could either be a really good thing or a really bad thing, because if there's a maximum limit on that, then you don't have enough money to like pay for like really expensive treatments if those ever come across. But also, if there's a maximum limit, then you don't have to keep putting money in once it reaches that limit. So you can have that amount set aside that is what you need, and then after that, like, the rest of the money is just yours to keep. I guess also there's another question that I would have is, like, how do they determine what that limit is, how much money you need to set aside? I wonder if it could be better for individuals to make those own decisions for themselves, which is, I think that would be a more like libertarian free market sort of approach, more individualistic approach, definitely. But still, I feel like there should be some default amount of money. Like maybe set that a little bit lower or significantly lower than what is actually necessary for a person to set aside. But yeah.
Argues would eliminate personal responsibility. In other words, it's entirely possible someone could go broke from exorbitant medical bills despite having plenty in their Medisave account, for no other reason than the government prohibits them from using it all. Every day of hospitalization, procedure, and treatment has a maximum proportion that can be paid for by Medisave. The rest is simply out of pocket.
That seems kind of dumb. Like the idea that there's this maximum proportion, anything over that you have to pay out of pocket. That seems kind of dumb. I feel like if you set that money aside, that should be yours to spend on healthcare, regardless of what happens. Like regardless of how expensive the healthcare is.
In 1990, the Singapore government addressed this inadequacy and introduced what they had been trying to avoid: insurance. Medishield Life, as it's now known, is intended as a defense against only the most catastrophic of conditions involving long-term treatment, like dialysis.
See, I feel like this is very necessary. I think you can't avoid insurance, because there's always the risk of something extreme happening, and you need to pool that risk somehow. Everyone can't just pay off their own risks, because then individual risk for each person increases. It's the basic idea of, oh God, what is it called? Fuck. Well, it's the principle of risk pooling. So like when you sum up, like the sum of variances, the sum of each individual variance for like loss is always going to be greater than if you pool those losses and then take the variance for each person.
Or cancer therapy. Even then, it activates only after patients have contributed a significant portion either out of pocket or via their Medisave account. But it's very affordable. A 20-year-old, for example, pays just $101 a year, which can even be paid for with Medisave. Each age group pays however much is needed to make it independently sustainable. In other words, it's not.
See, I think this actually makes a lot of sense. Why should I, a 20-year-old, pay for my grandma's health insurance? Or maybe that's kind of fucked up. Maybe I probably would pay for my grandma's health insurance because I care about her. Why should I pay for your grandma's health insurance? That's the question. Why should I pay for my neighbor's grandma's health insurance? I don't feel like that's necessarily important, but now it's probably good. It's probably good to have some pooling, but yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for basically individuals in a certain age group to pay the amount that works for themselves to be able to have health insurance.
Not simply a transfer of wealth from the young to the old, like the American pyramid scheme known as Social Security.
True.
Because of this, older people pay much higher premiums, $509 a year, for example, for those aged 90 or older. Still, Medishield is generally well liked. Though compulsory today, more people participated when it was voluntary than in the US 3 years after Obamacare was made mandatory, 94% to 91%. Those who want.
That's super interesting. It's almost like one of these systems is a little bit better than the other one. Also, I mean, voluntary insurance systems are probably a little better than mandatory ones. Yeah, I guess that makes sense though, because you mandate that people set aside some money to be able to pay for healthcare costs. That's mandatory, but then voluntary, like participation in an insurance system. I guess there's probably some problems with that, because I think you do need a significant amount of the population to be involved in an insurance system, but the fact that they're able to get those high participation numbers makes it feel like they're doing a very efficient job of providing that Medisave insurance.
More comprehensive insurance have the option.
Nah, Tremendous Pain. I don't trust your grandma. She might be a sweet lady, but I don't know. Just knowing the way things that you type in my chat, it's like, how good could her genes have really been?
Option of buying upgraded plans from private companies, all of which are tightly regulated to ensure competition. Finally, in 1993, Singapore stepped in with a safety net of last resort for the lowest income households. MediFund is a principal-protected, and thus indefinitely sustainable, endowment which pays for the medical care of those who can't. Any citizen who can prove that.
That's probably pretty base too. I think you need a basic safety net in healthcare. Like, if you can't afford to pay for insurance, should we just let you die when you get in a car accident or when you have a heart attack or something like that? Probably not. That doesn't seem like the best policy. Now, I'm sure some people would argue that, oh yeah, you should. Maybe if you would have saved a little bit more money or made the right decisions, then you could have survived. Then you could have had the money to survive. It's like, okay. I think that's stupid.
Their inability to pay can apply to a group of independent volunteers who make case-by-case judgments. Most applications are approved within 30 minutes, but the most complicated of cases can take up to 3 weeks. In 2019, MediFund paid $120 million involving over 1 million applications. These 3 M's, Medisave, Medishield, and MediFund, are often cherry-picked by those seeking to reform healthcare abroad. Some point to the mandatory savings accounts as evidence healthcare shouldn't be handed out for free. Others protest that MediFund is the real backbone of the system. In truth, neither is completely accurate. Each of the 3 M's is one layer of protection, without which the entire system wouldn't function. But don't get the wrong impression, the bulk of healthcare spending still takes the form of subsidies. In 2013, Medisave, Medishield, and MediFund accounted for 5.1, 2.1, and.
See, it's interesting that. Wait, what did he say? Hold up. Let me go back.
spending
I need to
still
make sure I
takes the
heard him right.
form of subsidies.
Yeah, a lot of the spending still takes the form of subsidies. Interesting how they pay such a low percentage. Well, it's interesting how they pay such a low percentage of GDP.
Medisave, Medishield, and Medifund
we'll hear what
accounted
the
for
study is.
5.1, 2.1, and 0.8% of all healthcare expenditures, respectively. What's revolutionary about the 3Ms, however, is
Tremendous Pain. I do appreciate the takes, man. They're not always good, but you do keep them coming steadily. I love it. I love it. You're one of the few chatters who consistently says something, which is kind of based. I like it.
not how large they are, but how they control costs for everyone, including taxpayers. Singapore solves the American problem in which hospitals are incentivized to charge exorbitant prices which are merely passed on to insurance companies. Because patients pay more out of pocket, hospitals are forced to control costs. These lower costs are passed on to the government too when it distributes subsidies.
Sorry, I'm kind of missing this. Hold up. I feel like this is important. I was talking about...
What's revolutionary about the 3Ms, however, is not how large they are, but how they control costs for everyone, including taxpayers. Singapore solves the American problem in which hospitals are incentivized to charge exorbitant prices which are merely passed on to insurance companies. Because patients pay more out of pocket, hospitals are forced to control costs. These lower costs are passed on to the government too when it distributes subsidies. In other words, while the sticker price may...
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, yeah, because if you just give a blank check to these hospitals every year, maybe not a blank check, but just guarantee that people will get free insurance by paying some check at the beginning of the year every year, which I assume is kind of how how healthcare in other countries works. You like budget, I'm going to spend this much. We're going to spend this much on the NHS this year. And then after that, everyone will just get in for free. I feel like that is going to cost significantly more money than like just letting people buy it when they need it and then having people set some money aside so that they're able to purchase it when they need it.
Feel higher for Singaporeans, the total amount they pay, both out of pocket and in taxes, is far, far lower. All of this is enabled by transparency. The government makes all costs public and easily accessible online. Hospitals are required to provide patients with an estimate of their bill, as well as the...
That's incredibly important. America has a huge transparency problem when it comes to healthcare. We kind of touched on it earlier, just because, a lot of the way that hospitals and insurance companies interact incentivizes significantly higher prices, basically. Significantly higher sticker prices.
The average cost at competing hospitals. But how, you may ask, are...
Oh. Ads. Oh, God. Dude, that dude's scaring me. He's like trying to touch me. Weirdo.
You may ask, are these subsidies distributed? What system could possibly ensure that the poor get support while the rich don't abuse it? For the most part, people just sort themselves. Public hospital rooms are split into 4 classes: C, B2, B1, and A. The cheapest, Class C, have 8 to 10 beds in a fairly utilitarian room, while the most expensive, Class A, are private rooms with a TV and air conditioning. The important thing is that these classes are treated as cosmetic luxury upgrades. The same doctors operate all wards with the same standards of care. They have no monetary incentive to treat anyone differently. And much like airplane classes, more premium rooms cost a significant...
If it's all like within one hospital, the doctors just go to every room, treat everybody basically the same. But then you can pay for a better experience, but you're not getting better care. I think that's probably a good thing. Yeah, I feel like everybody should have access to high quality healthcare. I don't feel like, oh, because I'm poor, I should have to like have these little band-aid fixes that don't solve underlying problems. But if I have a little more money, then I can get the best healthcare in the world that actually fixes my problems.
significantly more with only modest improvements, which naturally separates patients based on their willingness to pay. Is it fair that the poor sit in a stuffy, crowded room during hot, humid summers? Answers will vary, but many would argue the alternative, high prices for everyone, is worse. In fact, so many patients were content choosing lower classes than they could afford that hospitals eventually introduced means testing. Anyone with any income can choose whatever room they prefer, but subsidies vary both based on ward class and income. Class A rooms, for example, offer no subsidy, while Class C are subsidized up to 80%. For all these reasons, Singapore defies categorization. Is it a free market, or is it centrally planned? Yes. In theory, hospitals are welcome to charge whatever, and yet the entire market is tightly controlled by the government, who, in regulating everything from Medisave minimum contributions to what qualifies for Medishield, can influence whatever outcome it wishes. Is it public or private? Yes. 20% of primary care and 80% of secondary is public, but the two are expressly designed to work in concert. The system is not perfect. One challenge is that Medisave heavily relies on families who pool together costs for major operations. In 2010, for example, 44% of withdrawals were made for a family member, for example, someone's child, spouse, or parent. Today, however, the average Singaporean woman has just 1.15 children in her lifetime, the third lowest fertility rate in the world, meaning the population is rapidly shrinking. As the country gets older, it will experience significantly more chronic and complex illnesses, yet smaller families will mean fewer people can pool savings. Solving healthcare is an ongoing process.
Damn, how do I sound like Michael Moore just because I don't want poor people to die from no healthcare?
But Singapore can credibly say that.
See, I want to have a capitalist, like a very strong capitalist system, but I also don't want people at the bottom not being able to access healthcare. I think that's a problem. I think every single human being needs to be able to access healthcare if they want to live a free life, essentially, free from, if they want to be able to actually actualize their potentials without this constant risk of a massive healthcare bill coming over their head. But
has paved a new third path. Some countries offer medicine free at the point of care, which results in long queues. Others simply don't guarantee healthcare at all, and therefore have to leave behind the most vulnerable. Singapore, on the other hand, does neither. The million-dollar question is whether Singapore is a strange anomaly or a viable model for the rest of the world. Could this system work in the United States, for example? That's the question we explore in the extended version of this video on Nebula, which replaces what you're hearing right now with more of this video. Just about every other video, in fact, has bonus or extended content available on Nebula, which is the streaming site I and other educational YouTubers created to host new and experimental content.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting healthcare system. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's certain problems with it. I don't know necessarily how I feel 100% about government-run healthcare, where all of this is sort of like tightly controlled by the government, because then there's the question of how innovation will work and how competition will set in. But it seems like they do it in such a way where there's like competing hospitals, competing, So then isn't the solution to have a completely free market so that prices will drop? I don't think that's necessarily the best solution, because if you have a completely free market, let me think about this for a few seconds. I think you generally need a free market, or you need competition so that prices will drop. But I also don't think that you should. Let me think. Okay, because I think a free market and competition where you have. Okay, I think a free market where you have competition will cause prices to drop only if people have the option to say no, to not receive it, to be able to opt out of healthcare, to be able to opt out of, like, if I go to the store and see that eggs are $20, I'm not gonna buy eggs. So then that will naturally lower the cost for almost all the companies. But if you have a system where you aren't necessarily able to opt out, even if there is competition, all the competitors will be able to charge very high prices, and nobody will be able to opt out and say, no, I just don't want this thing. But used to find this stuff interesting, now I find it to be incredibly tedious. Yeah, a lot of politics is like that, but I don't know. That's the way it goes. Yeah. I think this sort of stuff is interesting. I don't necessarily know what the best healthcare system that I want is, but I feel like healthcare represents an example of a market failure, to some extent, because it allows for companies to charge prices that are way too high and people still having to buy them. Like, for example, if you get in an ambulance after having a heart attack, you don't really have a choice in what price you're going to pay. You don't have the choice to say no. But yeah. But don't we need food? But like, you don't need a specific kind of food. You can choose between all these different types of food. There's a ton of different competitive food sources. So I don't think that is directly analogous. Like, when you need healthcare, you need a specific kind of healthcare. And you don't have the ability to say no to that. And when you need healthcare, you need a very specific, like, set of things to be covered under that health insurance policy. Because there's a risk, basically, of almost anything happening to you. Almost anything that's covered happening to you. So you don't really have the ability to say no to healthcare. But I do think in general, a market system would be most effective. Because I think that can lower prices. But then the other issue it comes down to is everybody needs to have access to healthcare to some extent. What if a universal medicine was created to erase all health problems forever? Would it be fair to allow it even if it caused all doctors to be unemployed? Oh, I would say it definitely would be fair to allow it. I think ultimately everyone will be better off, even if those doctors will be unemployed and will suck for them. So I think we might need to, like, do something to make sure that they can get another job, maybe make sure that they can survive. But that would have to be a very short-term policy. But yeah, let's be done with the Singapore discussion, and then I think we could probably try to discuss. Let's see. This is anecdotal, but my grandma won't go to hospital. She only does homeopathic medicine, and she has lived to 95 like that. Hey man, there are exceptions to everything. From my understanding, homeopathic medicine is insane and pseudoscientific, but I also don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to be able to talk down on it. Holistic healthcare. Let me look into that. Boop, boop, boop. I would say that's competition, but all the potential alternative medicines that have been stopped by red tape in the last 50 years. Wait, what is that sentence? But also all of the potential alternative medicines that have been stopped by red tape in the last 50 years. I think it's true that the FDA probably does stop a lot of medicines, but there's also the question of, like, okay, how much do we want to take the risk with certain medicines? Do we want to take the risk of allowing those to come out? But then there's also the issue of, like, hey, well, if there's a treatment that the FDA is delaying, but then allows to come out, or then doesn't allow to come out, that would help a lot of people, there's a lot of people that would die in that process. So I think there needs to be a balancing act with that. I don't know, but I do think there's still, it feels like there needs to be some sort of FDA. Even if that's made up of like a bunch of different agencies potentially coming together, which maybe could be done privately. I don't necessarily know. Having a strong positive attitude can do wonders for your immune system and overall health. I think that's true, because I think stress actually does lower the lifespan of a lot of people. I don't know. Those things are potential competition. Sorry, I'm high. That's funny. Yeah, enjoy the high, man. This is the perfect stream to watch. I don't know. I'm really trying to figure out what I believe about like healthcare, FDA, medicine, all that sort of stuff, because I feel like for so long I just was very set in my ways on free market healthcare. But I think there's, as I talked about, I think there's problems with that. Holistic medicine. Ooh, I think that's probably a good thing. I personally think that I think that a lot of medicine can be, or a lot of medical improvement can be made just through changing like lifestyle choices, like going to the gym more, getting enough sleep, avoiding stress. But currently we live in a system that very much incentivizes people just to, or we live in a culture, not necessarily a system. We live in a culture where people want to find these like quick fixes where they can find like just this one pill to fix their fatness or their mental health crisis or anything like that. And it doesn't necessarily work the best. Because I feel like if doctors could, most doctors would just say, hey, most health problems can be solved, I think, just by exercising, eating healthy, getting enough sleep. I think most problems that we face can be solved like that, but people don't want to make those lifestyle changes, which is really stupid, and I think most people should. Didn't Rand use public health care by the end of her life? Yeah, she did, but she also justified it by the fact that she paid into the system and is just getting her money back, basically, which is an understandable position. I think if I were free market, I would believe in that. Fasting, strongly recommend fasting. Yeah, I think, maybe not fasting, but I think eating low calories is an incredibly good thing. I don't know. I've been, since the beginning of 2022, well, at the beginning of 2022, I was 210 pounds, and since then I've lost 20 pounds just by like counting calories, watching what I eat. So I think that's probably been super helpful. But yeah, I think now we should maybe jump into, oh shit, hold on, let me close that out. Yeah, I think now would be a good time to talk about Switzerland, because I think they have a different approach so I think the basic idea behind Swiss healthcare, there's not any free state-provided health insurance, but private health insurance is mandatory for everybody, which also I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, because similar to what we talked about before in the Singapore video, like every single person has the risk of having some health crisis happen to them. So I think it's probably a good thing to make sure that everybody has money set aside or some type of insurance to make sure that everybody, if that happens to them, can actually get the care that they need, rather than all of a sudden this thing just coming on them all at once and them having to pay a ton of money just out of pocket for it, which could lead to bankruptcy, could lead to death, could lead to them not being able to pay for it. So I think just making sure that people have the money set aside, and also making sure that there is some basic safety net if they don't have enough money or something incredibly disastrous happens. I think that's generally a good thing. Just because I don't think it's pro-freedom to allow people to live with this constant risk hanging over their head. It's just going to limit the number of minds in society, the amount of people that can actually like think, pursue their self-interest, can innovate, can do all those sort of things. Thoughts on a sugar tax to discourage unhealthy eating habits? I don't know. I think health needs to be something that people can take into their own hands, for the most part. I think healthcare. I think everybody needs healthcare, but I also don't think that the government should make personal choices for people. I think it maybe makes sense to make sure that they can like put money aside for them, or make sure that they actually have the money to pay for health disasters when they need it. But I don't think that they should actually make those health decisions for people. I think that's a stretch too far. I think people should be able to act freely. But I guess, yeah, I think the distinction here is there's certain things that every single person needs, like healthcare, education. Everybody needs access to some level of quality for that. Everybody needs access to some level of it that is at a certain level of quality. And I think that part should be guaranteed in some way, whether that be through providing it, which is probably my last option when I'm thinking about this, or by making sure that they set money aside for it. Because if they don't have that money set aside, if they can't get those things, then they can't really live. You can't really live a life if you don't have healthcare. I don't think you can't really live. I think the healthcare argument is a little bit more difficult to make, but I think the education one is obvious, because education is very clearly something that every single person needs. Like the amount of education that you have as a child is going to, or the quality of education you have as a child is going to determine a lot of what happens with the rest of your life. It's possible to get a bad education and still turn out fine, but it's very rare and uncommon. It really, like, your childhood sets a lot of your values, a lot of your way of thinking about things and approaching things. So I think quality education, like an access to quality education for every single person, is very necessary. Healthcare is similar, not for the same reasons though. I think healthcare is something that every single person needs, just based on the fact that we all have a risk of a disaster happening to us. And I think everybody needs to have access to healthcare, so to some level of healthcare because of that. For one, because that risk could constantly hang over your head. And for two, you could just be building up a life, building up something, pursuing a career, pursuing a family, and all of a sudden that can just, in a second, just be taken from you. And I don't think forcing people to have to, or requiring that people pay for that out of their own pocket, without like making sure that they have money set aside or making sure that they have health insurance, I don't think that's a good policy ultimately. We do live in a society. But let's look at this a little bit. So the healthcare in Switzerland, there's no free state-provided health services, which I think is a good thing. I think free health-provided services, as we talked about before, it very much incentivizes people just to go to the doctor for any like bad feeling that they might have, and it leads to wasteful health insurance essentially, and it leads to high wait times, very inefficient service, wasted resources, wasted time, money, resources on, just because people are always incentivized for any problem they have to go seek health insurance. So I think that's a major problem. But private health insurance is compulsory for all persons residing in Switzerland. I think that's probably reasonable, because I think that everybody should sort of be required to have something set aside, to have something in case the worst happens, in case their body malfunctions on them. Do you think the American healthcare system created the opioid crisis? Yes, to an extent. I think we have an obsession with prescribing pills to people, to just giving people this one pill to fix all their problems. And I think opioids are sort of related to that, because doctors were very much incentivized to just prescribe opioids constantly to everybody. Like every time there's a surgery, like when I got my wisdom teeth taken out, I think they gave me like Oxycontin or Oxycodone. There's some drug that they gave me that was an opioid. There's a difference between those words. I don't know what it is though. I never took it. I didn't really have that problem, the problem with it. But the fact that they would just give that to me for something so small, it's like, why are we just handing that out? You know, It's like, I can understand it in certain circumstances if you went through a really brutal surgery, but for something minor, it should be like, okay, I'm feeling pain. Now I'm going to go get it. Like, go say, like, hey, I'm feeling this immense pain in the back of my mouth. Like, my wisdom teeth, this wisdom teeth operation is causing me a lot of pain. So I got to go get this, get these pills now. But it shouldn't be provided before you actually have the pain. But I don't necessarily know how to solve that. But here, let's watch this Swiss healthcare thing. I think Switzerland appeals to me a little bit more than Singapore, just because it's mostly done privately through the private sector. I'm a bit skeptical of the state doing everything for you, because I think that limits freedom and the ability for you to choose between different options. Because if the state starts making bad decisions, then that affects everybody. But if one private insurance company starts making bad decisions, well, that affects everybody for a little bit within that insurance company, but then they can move somewhere else, and then that will incentivize these insurance companies to continue to provide good service. But it seems like also Singapore isn't necessarily dealing with that problem, so.
The American identity begins when Benjamin Franklin knit the American colonies together.
Franklin is endlessly interesting.
Printer, scientist, revolutionary.
He is the only
I love
founding
Ben
father
Franklin.
who evidently had a sense of humor.
His vision is broader than the American Revolution.
The things that he spoke of, that he wrote about, had a certain amount of power.
He really was an American genius.
Benjamin Franklin starts Monday, April 4th on PBS and the PBS app.
We return now to our special series on universal health.
This is going to be a quiet video.
Since the pandemic
Let me
began,
turn this up. Let me turn this
a
up for you guys.
growing number of Americans think the U.S. healthcare system is below average compared to other nations. That is according to our latest PBS NewsHour Marist poll. As the U.S. considers changes, William Brangham and producer Jason Kane traveled to Switzerland, which has preserved the private insurance market while still achieving universal coverage. Like this whole series, this story was filmed before the pandemic erupted.
The Swiss shop for health insurance a lot like they shop for their groceries. There's a wide array of choices.
You want to choose which one?
This cheese or that one.
I think that's pretty based. I think having lots of options, lots of competition is good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of capitalism. I'm a huge fan of the free market and just providing lots of options and competition. So,
with the high deductible or one with the high premium. For all Swiss families, like the Prestons, it's a system that in some ways is even more market-driven than our own. But the big difference? Everyone here is covered. The idea behind it is what's known as social solidarity, and it's what impressed American-born Jason, who's a teacher, when he moved here and married Sabine, who is Swiss.
I mean, for me, it's just sort of a basic right, and they seem to appreciate that. Like.
Do you see it that way too? I know that the Swiss talk about it that way. Do you buy that idea that healthcare is a right?
Yes, because I mean, yeah, I mean, coming from where I come from, this sort of negativity in the States that, you know, well, if you're poor, then it's almost like you deserve to die, right, for being poor. It's like you're being punished for circumstances that are outside of your control. It may not be said like that explicitly, but that's kind of the feeling, you know, the vibe that's given off that, you know, well, if you can't afford it, well, then you don't deserve to be well.
Yeah, that sort of idea, I don't necessarily agree with his wording of it, but that's a problem that I had with the way that objectivists approach like free market politics, because it's like, I don't really want people to die. I don't want less minds to be active in the world and pursuing their own self-interest and innovating and thinking of new things, but not ensuring that people can get healthcare when they need it, even if it's just like critical care. I'd be a fan of like a health insurance system where it's just like, okay, if you desperately need it, then maybe we'll fund it. But if it's like not really something you need, then no reason for the government to even step in. But I think allowing something like that to take place is very dangerous, where people can just like be building something, be pursuing their self-interest, be pursuing some innovation that they're working on, and then all of a sudden something happens and all of that is just lost. Yeah, I'm very pro freedom of the human mind to pursue innovations and pursue its self-interest, because I think that ultimately leads to the best outcomes, because individual pursuit leads to progress in a society, economic progress in a society. Yeah, because I think individual minds are the only sort of things that can continually innovate, can continually move forward and come up with new ideas. And when that's shackled in any way, or when it dies off, it's like, okay, these innovations aren't going to come around anymore. It feels like you're being punished for being poor. This is a dishonest formulation. Possibly.
Health insurance in Switzerland is costly. Jason and Sabine pay about 16% of their income on premiums. On top of that, the average Swiss pays more out of pocket for things like co-pays than the average American. But the Prestons like the care they get, and they like buying into a system that protects everyone.
Here it's a bit more humane. It's like, look, there's a basic level of care that people deserve. It costs, but you still deserve it. And I think the Swiss government's commitment to that is spot on.
This is
Yeah, I like that. I like it when things cost money, and are priced, because that allows for efficient economic allocation. However, people should be able to, if people need a basic level of access to a certain level of quality, I think it's necessary that they get that.
One of the men who helped design that system. Thomas Zeltner was Switzerland's State Secretary of Health for many years, and is now a consultant to the government, and until recently chaired one of the country's private insurance companies.
In the 90s, there was a debate on, is healthcare such an essential part of well-being and feeling safe in your country and in your neighborhood, that you want that everyone has access to it? And actually it was something like 70% of the population who said, wow, we want that.
That is a resounding yes.
Yes.
Zeltner says one of the crucial innovations was separating health insurance from employment, which has allowed the Swiss to keep their health insurance during the pandemic, while millions of Americans are losing theirs when they lose their jobs. They've been able to separate the two, but instead of making the government the single payer, like in the UK, they've made it so that a wide array of insurance companies can flourish.
And the fun thing is you can choose, and I just told a friend, I can choose to go to the barber here or there. Since 30 years, I go to the same barber. But the option to be able to choose is, kind of a freedom.
It is a freedom, and it sort of places a check on these insurance companies as well. Like, America actually doesn't have that much competition in healthcare. Like, I don't think you're allowed to purchase health insurance across state lines. I know that was the case before. I don't know if that's changed. I assume it hasn't, because we don't really do much with our healthcare. I don't feel like there's been much done in general there.
This is all now baked into society, as Swiss is the country's famously punctual rail system. There are roughly 60 private companies selling plans, but the Swiss government does take a firm hand in regulation. It mandates basic coverage all plans must include, and the government sets...
Okay, I think that's okay, because I think you need to have a basic level of quality. You need to have a basic level of coverage. Every single person needs that. That's kind of been the main point that I want to harp on. I think when there's something where everyone needs access to a certain level of quality or a certain amount of care, like a certain amount of coverage, I think that's some time where the government needs to say, hey, we need to make sure that everybody has this. We can't just give people the option of like saying no to this. Like, that is, yeah, I think that's inherently irrational, and allowing for someone to have the choice to just like kill themselves, essentially, just to completely ruin their lives, is not necessarily a choice that I think people should have, because it overall limits their freedom to allow them to make that choice. Yeah, like if you like think of it in a hypothetical certain sense, where it's like, Let me think of a good hypothetical. Should we? No, never mind. I can't think of a good hypothetical right now.
The prices that can be charged for medications and procedures. Depending on the plan they choose, the Swiss can pick their own doctors and avoid needing referrals for specialists. Wait times for procedures are low, in part because doctors get paid well, there's lots of them, and the system is competitive. I met up with New York University's Victor Rodwin. He's a health policy expert who's traveling across the country studying its healthcare system.
The Swiss have the lowest avoidable mortality rate, which means mortality amenable to healthcare intervention.
Interesting.
It means the lowest rate of people who die, who shouldn't die. The U.S. has the highest.
The Swiss live about 5 years.
See, that's interesting. I think that's an incredibly important statistic. Let's listen to that again.
To healthcare intervention. It means the lowest rate of people.
The lowest rate of people who die because they don't, like when they don't have to die. I think that's incredibly important. I think people need that basic level of care. I think that's sort of the principle that I've been harping on. People need to survive at least. Like if there's a possibility that someone could die from this, or if someone's dying and health insurance could save them, I think health insurance, that amount of coverage should be provided to everybody. Everybody should have access to that.
People who die, who shouldn't die. The U.S. has the highest.
What's their policy on weed? I'm not actually sure. Hopefully it's legal. I mean, it should be. Tremendous Pain says it's overrated. Honestly, I agree. Weed is overrated. I don't know. It kind of just turns you into a vegetable. It's not the best experience. But should it be legal? Of course. I think it's absurd to lock someone in a cage because they smoked a little bit of weed. Like, it's like, okay, who are they hurting?
The Swiss live about 5 years longer on average than we do, and they're a lot healthier than we are, suffering far lower rates of asthma, diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension. Rodwin credits part of that to Swiss healthcare, a system which polls incredibly well here.
They express high confidence in the medical profession and high confidence that if the problem occurs, they know they're covered. There's a sense of quality in this country which goes from chocolate to cheese to watches. And in healthcare, it's the same. They do things carefully and at generally high quality.
Swiss officials say there's another main reason they achieve these results. It requires everyone.
Who needs weed when you can have a ham sandwich? True. But what if you could have a ham sandwich where the ham is an edible, where the ham is laced with weed? Or take some mayo, spread it on there, put some RSO in there, let the RSO dissolve in the mayo, and then eat that. That sounds, wow.
Like Mel Hersig, to have insurance, no excuses. It's similar to the individual mandate with the Affordable Care Act, but unlike the ACA, this mandate has sharp teeth. The government will garnish your wages if you don't comply.
Very neat.
That's partly how they get to universal coverage, but for young people like Hersig, who don't need a lot of medical care, it can seem like a big imposition.
So what happens if you don't buy the insurance? What happens to you?
Well, it's also like you have to be registered to get a job, you have to have an address, you have to then show the local council office your proof of health insurance and blah, blah, blah. So they can chase you down quite easily.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And if the government wasn't forcing you to buy health insurance, do you think you would buy it anyway?
No, I wouldn't have it for.
Just because that monthly cost is too much?
Mm-hmm. And because I don't use it, I don't get my money's worth out of it.
I don't think that's very intelligent. I feel like it's incredibly important just to have that, just in case something disastrous goes wrong. Or even, I mean, also just getting medical checkups every month or whatever. Or no, not every month, every year is incredibly important for your health. Because then when you go in, they can catch something if it's going wrong before it goes disastrously wrong.
The government offers premium subsidies for lower income workers, and it caps yearly out-of-pocket expenses. So, unlike the US, people rarely go bankrupt from medical bills.
That's the list of all your debt.
But those premiums can sometimes lead to serious debt for middle-income families. This woman didn't want her name revealed because of the stigma around debt. Her husband had multiple surgeries, lost his job, and their income dried up.
We were getting subsidies to help pay for the health insurance, but we still had to pay a large portion ourselves.
And even with the subsidy, it still was unaffordable.
At the time, it was unaffordable for us, yes. I think it is expensive, but I think the healthcare is also very good.
So even though the costs put you at real financial peril, you still see some benefit to the system.
Because I see that if everybody pays into health insurance, it makes the quality of health insurance better for the population.
Intensive care is very expensive.
Brown University's Dr. Ashish Jha studies healthcare systems around the world, and he traveled with us for this series as a collaborator.
I think what's really remarkable about what we've seen here in Switzerland is it's a totally different model for achieving universal health coverage, making sure everybody has access to health care, providing high quality care, in a way that's so different from what the UK does through the national.
One thing, I don't think necessarily everybody needs to be provided high quality healthcare. I think everybody needs to not necessarily be provided, but make sure that they have the ability to afford basic coverage. I think that is something that was true about the Singaporean healthcare system when we talked about that, and is also true about the Swiss healthcare system. They guarantee a basic level of coverage. I don't think you need to guarantee like the maximum coverage in the world. I think you need to guarantee access to basic coverage. Like if you're gonna die, like you should have the money set aside. You should have the insurance to be able to cover that. And I think it doesn't necessarily need to be provided, but I think that should be like something that is required that everybody have it. However you go about doing that.
National Health Service, and actually in many ways pretty different from the US approach.
Jha notes the US, of course, is a much bigger nation than Switzerland, has a higher poverty rate, and the Swiss have a more robust safety net. But there's more.
And that is kind of the rule-following mentality of the Swiss, that the government says you must buy health insurance, and everybody says, yes, okay, we will buy health insurance. As opposed to in America, where we bristle when the government tells us we have to do anything. And we bring up the broccoli argument, what if the government made you eat broccoli? The Swiss don't worry about eating broccoli. If the government thinks that's something we ought to do, we'll do it.
That's a little iffy. I think there's a difference between the mandating a basic level of coverage that everybody has, mandating a basic need that everyone has, versus like saying, oh, you have to eat this specific thing, do this specific thing. I think that's stupid.
In that way, it is very different, and it allows the Swiss health system to function differently than what we've been able to do in the US.
For the record, the Preston girls, not big fans of broccoli, but Sabine and Jason are fine with it. They also know the insurance mandate costs them a lot, but they see it as part of the greater good, part of being Swiss. For the
Oh, that's a gross thing to say. I don't like the greater good.
PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham in Oberhofen am Thunersee, Switzerland.
I think it's good because it provides you with maximal freedom. Because once you have that out of the way, once that's covered, once you don't have that risk hanging over your head, then you can actually like pursue your life in a way where you're not concerned about that risk. You can maximally pursue your life. You can pursue it in the most aggressive way possible. Dude, the mountains were kind of fire. The Swiss Alps. Oh my gosh. Hold up. Give me some beautiful pictures, please. Oh my gosh. Bro, if I was living here, I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't even need healthcare. I can just go live in the mountains and just, I don't know. I could go, oh my god, look at that. Just go chill in the mountains and just die out there without my healthcare. Honestly. Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh. I need to move to Switzerland. Holy shit. Holy shit, that's beautiful. I love Switzerland. What a great place. They also have really good public transportation, from my understanding. I think also in general, trains are based. Trains are incredibly based. I think the U.S. wasted way too much of its money and resources on the U.S. wasted way too much of its money and resources on building highways, and that ultimately took money away from that could have gone to trains. This is actually something that Rand talks about in Capitalism: The Unknown Ideal. I wonder if I can find the chapter, actually. Hold up. Oh, no. Let's see if I can find it. Maybe it's in... Wait, hold up. It was one of my favorite chapters in the book. Yeah, it's chapter 7. Notes on the history of American free enterprise. I think that's the one. During these 30 years, many attempts are made by private interest to build. That might be it. Possibly. Oh yeah, I have been standing the whole time. I have a standing desk, so I have a standing desk, so I just stand here now. Yeah, because I guess because you guys have no idea. If I were sitting, I'd look like this. I would be underneath the desk. I don't know. I just got the standing desk because sitting is the new smoking, I think. Stand up, move around, go just like stand up and start dancing right now. I don't know. Go do it. Just stand up, start watching this video because sitting sucks. Sitting just destroys your body. It destroys your posture and it turns you into like, have you ever seen how old people just get like so like fat and like shaped like a fucking chair kind of, and their whole figure is just distorted and kind of gross. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of sitting. Chandler says a while ago actually, do re mi fa sol la ti. Beautiful, beautiful. Hold up. Do re mi fa sol la ti do. I can't sing. I can play piano though. Standing up for what you believe in. Let's go. I will fight for the revolution. Let's go. We are the 99%. We will fight for socialism in this country. And by socialism I mean worker co-ops, mandated, which is definitely socialism. Because worker co-ops can't exist under capitalism, so we're gonna mandate them and make sure that they do exist, and that would fix every problem with American capitalism. Oh my god, I love worker co-ops. If they were so based, then why aren't they already in existence? Actually, there are some in existence, and they're significantly more. They're significantly more efficient than the current privately owned firms that we see today. Then why aren't the banks funding them? The banks are corrupt capitalist institutions that want to suppress the working class. Oh, thanks. Good explanation, Vosh. You're welcome. Stance on walking. I take daily walks. They do wonders. Walking is awesome. I love walking. I have to walk back from class a lot because my house is... Ooh, I probably shouldn't dox myself, actually. Yeah, I'm very close to my campus that I live on. Yeah, well, we won't say anymore. So I am within walking distance, but that could mean like 30 minutes away. Yeah, whatever. I'm not gonna say too much about where I'm located because then you guys can find me. That would be fucked. But yeah. I don't really have much more to talk about. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about? Anyone want to come on the show and chat for a little bit? I might just play some music too. I feel like some piano would be fun right now. Yeah, whatever. That was not the best. It's a little sloppy. I don't play much piano. Fold your cuffs? What are you talking about, man? Oh, the cuffs are coming out? That's okay. It doesn't matter. I'm just talking. I'm just on stream. It doesn't really matter whether my cuffs are in or not. You don't like them out? Is that gross to you? Weirdo. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much more to say. I feel like this has been a solid, productive stream where I can just, like, talk a little bit, rant my mind off a little bit. Just say what's going on in the dome. But, yeah. I think, yeah, cover the Russia situation. Maybe I should, actually. I could probably talk about that a little bit more. I might do some research on that and then plan something for a different day, because I don't really like just randomly talking about stuff, because it's been a while since I've spoken publicly, so a lot of times now I don't feel like I trust my subconscious enough to just say what's in my head. But yeah. Have you seen the new Batman? Yeah, I did watch it. It was really good, actually. I really enjoyed just the way that everyone was characterized. It felt super realistic. The Riddler was super interesting, because he was kind of what you would expect the Riddler to be in real life. Just like this awkward streamer on this like weird platform that no one's ever heard of. Or was he on Facebook, actually? I don't remember. But it was cool because I was like actively cringing as I watched him, and I was like, oh god, I don't want to watch this guy anymore. He's weird and gross. And it's like, I at first didn't like the character because of that. I'm like, oh, this was a poorly made character. Like, why is his suit look so weird, and why is he so awkward, and why is his laugh like that? And then I kind of like, oh, hey, this is actually how I'm supposed to be reacting. This is how I'm supposed to be feeling about Batman. Tremendous Pain says, you know Haas Infrared? I do. I have watched some of his videos. He's very obsessed with the alpha male aesthetic. It's a bit cringe. It really points to his low self-esteem, because he's just obsessed with like yelling at people and talking over them and calling them fucking beta males and talking about how short they are, when he's actually like similar to my height. Probably like, I might be taller than Haas, actually. I'm about 5'9". Yeah, I haven't measured myself in a while though. I wonder if that's accurate. I wonder if I've grown or shrunk or anything like that. But apparently Haas is like 5'3", which is kind of insane. Nah, I'm playing. I think he's like 5'9" too, which is understandable. But he's got big muscles. That makes up for it. Hey yo. Let's go. Strong boy hours. Do a debate with him? That would be interesting. Maybe once I get more into the flow of YouTube a little bit more, I can do a debate with him, because I don't know, right now I'm still like stumbling over my words a little bit. I'm not as smooth as I could be. Yeah, I feel like I need to just get back in the habit of streaming more, and then I'll be able to start doing debates again and be able to form more coherent, logical sentences and just be able to speak my mind better, because I feel like I've not entirely lost the ability to do that, but a little bit, actually. Stuff doesn't come out of my head as cleanly as I would like it to, sometimes. But, I mean, that's why you stream, though. That's why I began streaming in the first place, because back during high school, I used to have this huge problem where I would start talking, and then all of a sudden my brain would just forget what I was talking about, and I would just completely freeze up. And that's why I created my YouTube channel freshman year, and it's why I continue to talk on YouTube, because I want to improve my communication skills. I want to be able to explain things a lot better to people. Last season, Better Call Saul coming out soon. I know, I'm excited for that. Yo, Breaking Bad is, oh my god, best series ever. Better Call Saul, I'm like, oh god, this is going to be like a crappy spinoff. And then all of a sudden you watch it, it's like, holy shit, this is beautiful. This was so well done. Everything is great about it. Oh my god, I love Better Call Saul. What a great show. Yeah, I feel like I should do something else, or I should just drop out of it. Who do you think won the Destiny versus Nick debate? I don't know. I feel like Destiny won it, but I'm also a little biased because I agree with Destiny. Nick did a really good job, though, of presenting the Russian perspective. I think he's very good at rhetoric. He's very good at making arguments, which is something that, I don't know, I wish I could aspire to be like my idol Nick, you know? Nick Fuentes is my idol. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed the debate. I think I agree with Destiny though after it. Just because Destiny harped a lot on the fact that these countries, they want to join NATO. NATO does not aggress in Russia. Yeah, and I think. Wait, was it you who brought up the Libya point before? Hold up. Oh gosh, I gotta scroll back up. Because I think that was something that Nick brought up, and they talked about that a little bit. But the Libya thing seems different because there was like a oppressive dictator in there, and they wanted to uninstall him. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't really care too much about resolving conflicts in the Middle East and like deposing of dictators. I more care about responding to threats. But yeah, Sopranos is the best show ever. Breaking Bad is a little behind. I haven't watched Sopranos actually. Some of my friends have started watching it, but I was asleep. I was like sleeping when they started watching it, so I didn't get to start watching it. But I might need to hop on that train. You know, start watching Sopranos. The more you debate, the better you get. It is what it is. That's true, and it's also like a muscle that you kind of work throughout time. Like times when I'm debating a lot and talking a lot, I get really good at talking. I get really good at arguing and communicating. But when I take a break from that for a while, I begin to struggle a lot more. But it is what it is. You just got to start doing it and just keep going with it. So otherwise, you're just screwing yourself. You're just committing yourself to a life of not being able to explain yourself very well, which is why Hassan's probably so bad at debates. I bet he was better before, but he just kind of decided to not be good at them, and he decided to stop trying, which was kind of fucked. You know, I feel like Hassan's an intelligent guy, you know? He really does a good job of explaining how the other side feels and just understanding how the other side and responding to it adequately. How many debates have you done on the channel? 3, I think, that were framed as debates initially. I've argued with people on the channel other times, though. I think I argued with Philosophical Zombie Hunter a little bit, but that was, I don't know, that's one of those ones where it like kind of borders the line between discussion and debate. But there were 3 that were framed as debates going in. One was my Anarchy Seeds debate, where I argued with Anarchy Seeds, who's like a 100 subscriber dude, about whether or not Ancapistan is based, whether or not we should all be advocating to get rid of the government and have an ANCAP society. I obviously don't agree with anarcho-capitalism. My second debate was the Patrick Casey one. I feel like you've probably seen that. I feel like you were around when I had that debate, or that you popped up on my channel then. That debate went fairly well. It was a difficult situation though, because Casey was a much more experienced debater than me, and I was also in a room with groypers who were just adding studies to help him out, who were like Googling in the background, like trying to find him stuff. I think there were 2 times where they jumped in and said something. But I feel like I did fairly well in that debate. Depending on the day, I feel worse about it and feel better about it. There were some mistakes in that debate. But overall, I feel good about that one. But I think my best debate was the one with Adam Friended, where we talked about egoism, basically, my conception or Rand's conception of ethics. I was very much big fan of her ethics. I have some disagreements with her now, because I think happiness / pleasure should serve as the basis of ethics, rather than like individual life. Because I think you can't really value life until you value happiness, because because life is not worth living unless you can attain happiness in life. Like, I think suicide is a rational option if happiness is impossible. But yeah, that's like my big sort of disagreement with Rand. Have seen the KCU debate, but I wasn't around then. Interesting. I think a lot of people who have been consistent viewers came from that debate. Like came from the groper community, or like people who were near that community. But yeah, okay. So the Friended debate I think went really well. I think that was one of my best debates because I think I explained myself super well and answered his questions in a really effective way, and he just ended up sounding really confused, and I don't know, I didn't feel like his arguments made much sense, but maybe I just didn't understand him at the time. And then of course we have my Vaush debate. No, I've never debated Vaush. That would be interesting though. I would have to go in with like lots of confidence and lots of ability to focus on the debate and be able to just like confidently yell at him when he is trying to dismiss my points. Came from randomly stumbling upon your Nick is Stalin video. Oh yes, my most popular and also most disliked video. That was a lot of people came from that video. Which I have no regrets. I have no regrets about that video. Oh my gosh. That was funny. Because the whole premise of the video, I think, was comparing Fuentes to Stalin and like saying like, oh, Fuentes would prefer there was like the clip of him at the beginning where it was like, oh, I'd prefer communism to whatever system we have now, or like whatever. There's some weird thing that he said, and then I like go into that, or prefer communism to like a multicultural society or something. I forget the specifics. But then I jumped in and like started talking about why I'm pro-immigration and why immigration is good for America, basically. Have you heard of Daily Wire, kids? Hold up, I need to let me look that up. Have I heard of Daily Wire, kids? Let us see. Let's take a little look at this. Hold up. Daily Wire announces $100 million investment into DW Kids. Oh God, what is this? Did you see Nick's response to your video? I think it's up on YouTube. Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. A lot of time he's just like sitting back and kind of watching it. I had a very
if Harry's Razors is our
I had a very ideological approach to that video, where I was very confident about very like broad statements about history.
Statement to America that you don't have to give your money to woke corporations who hate you. And if the Daily Wire itself historically has been our way of saying to Americans, you don't have to give your money to woke corporate media that obviously hates you. Our movie company, Daily Wire Entertainment, has been saying you don't have to give your money to woke entertainment companies that obviously hate you.
Oh God,
where does that leave us now? Well, now it leaves us with Disney. Disney, they're the gift that keeps on giving. They gave us Gina Carano. I think we should give them a round of applause for that. And they learned absolutely nothing. They learned absolutely nothing from their defeat in Virginia because of the radicalization of children that was exposed by Luke Rosiak in Loudoun County. They learned nothing, and today, because of the great reporting of Chris Rufo, we got to see leaked footage from inside Disney of high-up Disney employees saying things like, we have a not-so-secret gay agenda.
Oh no!
Saying things like,
not
we
the
insert,
gay agenda.
we
See, it's stuff like this where it's like this vague posturing at like, oh my God, the gay agenda. They're gonna turn our kids gay and they're gonna destroy Christian values. I don't care. I don't know. It's like, it just feels like there's just a lot of fear mongering going on for like very vague words.
Make sure I get this quote right. We're adding in queerness wherever we can. And that, quote, no one is trying
Tremendous Pain. I did get brigaded by
to
gripers.
stop the producer who was doing so. Another executive within the company said, if anything, we don't have enough LGBTQIA representation in content made for very small children. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to do the same thing we always do. We're going to build.
I don't know. I don't have much to say on this because I really don't care. Like, I'm fine with kids seeing gay people in media when they're children, as long as it's like appropriate, as long as they're not like describing to them what gay sex is, which is, I feel like that's what conservatives pretend is going on. They're like in this kid show, like the little bunny rabbit walks up to the fox and is like, "Hey fox, can you fuck me in the ass real quick?" And then the fox fucks him in the ass, and then I don't know. Is this what they think's going on? It's maybe I'm strawmanning a little bit, but I really just don't care if kids see gay people.
Alternatives. Americans have enormous economic might. They just don't have any alternatives. The Daily Wire is building those alternatives, and today I'm proud to tell you that we will be launching Daily Wire Kids.
Let's go. I feel like whatever these cartoons are, they're just going to be super cringe and super preachy because that's all conservative, like books, kid shows, all this stuff. All it is just very preachy and boring from my experience, from what I've seen.
And I want to be clear that DW Kids is not a direct response to the leak tape that we heard from Disney today. We've been working on this for months. Some of you in the room have been a part of it, but we've kept it pretty close. We haven't let most of you in the room know because it just wasn't ready. We wanted a huge announcement, and our plan was to roll out the announcement in November. Let's get past the politics of the midterm elections. Let's get past the Jeremy's Razors launch. Let's get past Terror on the Prairie. Let's get past What is a Woman. Let's get some open runway in front of us, and then let's announce DW Kids. That was the plan. Disney took that plan away from us because what they exposed today to the world is something that we've known all along, something that anyone working in the entertainment industry has known for a long time, that they are hell-bent on taking your children away from you. But what they did today is they
God, the
exposed it to
fear-mongering, it's insane. Like, they're gonna come and take your children. Disney is coming to get you. Disney's coming to take your children and turn them into gay little trannies. Like, oh God. You're fucking weird, dude. You're weird. What are you doing?
world, and we want to say there is an alternative coming. We've been working on it for months, which is why I'm proud to tell you that 3 months ago, we hired our first two writers under DW Entertainment, Eric Branscombe and Ethan Nicole. Now, these are two writers who came to us by way of the Babylon Bee, one of the funniest websites in America today. But before that, they were the writers on VeggieTales, the animated series. These guys have a deep history in animated kids content that has our values. There's 6 scripts in to our very first animated kids show, which is called Chilla Time.
Oh no. Chilla Time. I wonder what they're going to talk about.
Chilla Time is a family of chinchillas who homeschool their kids. And they don't homeschool their kids in sort of the normal way. There's not a lot of sitting around at tables. There's not a lot of arts and crafts. There's completely immersive insanity. When the Chilla parents want to teach their Chilla kids about George Washington, suddenly the kids find themselves fighting in the Revolutionary War. But things don't ever go.
Oh no, it's exactly what you were talking about. It's gonna be directly on the nose. Like, George Washington was this great American. Yeah, like, I mean, I love George Washington, but why are we like inserting political rhetoric directly into kid shows. Like, literally talking about the Revolutionary War, talking directly about George. Like, it's going to be so political. Why? There's no point. Just make a kid show that's fun. Like, that's what Disney does. That's what all these companies do. They'll, like, put in gay characters, but it's not, like, the main focus of the show is not about being gay, or that being gay is okay, or, like, any of that stuff. Like, it implicitly suggests that throughout, but maybe you can just implicitly suggest, like, some conservative values throughout the show. Oh my gosh.
Quite like they're supposed to, because, of course, we're the Daily Wire, and we're not making polemics. So our goal isn't to make a piece of educational content. No, our goal is to make some really great kids content that kids actually want to see, but where they gain some perspective. They gain a sort of baseline understanding of what we might call cultural literacy. So there's no proof that as they act out the Revolutionary War, anything will actually happen the way it happened in history, but there is you can count on the fact that it will be absolutely hilarious when it does happen. And more importantly, unlike Disney, which used to create wholesome content, which used to create content that parents could trust their children in front of, parents will be able to rest assured that their kids can watch.
Yeah, the PragerU cartoons. That's what I was thinking about. Yeah, the one with, oh God.
DW Kids, Entertainment, without having to...
It was just so on the nose. Like, oh yeah, Reagan was this great guy who did all this great stuff. And this is a great kid show, guys.
View it first and then explain to their kids why mommy and daddy don't actually agree with that TV show later. Our second piece of DW Kids content...
Oh my God, this dude appeals, this sort of stuff appeals to those parents who are like, oh my God, I can't let my kids watch SpongeBob and shit like that. Like, I remember those kids back in the day, like, their parents wouldn't let them watch certain shows because it's like, oh, this is anti-Christian. I don't want to have to explain to them why I disagree with the show. It's like, Jesus Christ, why is this so... Why are you guys inserting moral values so heavily into these children's shows? Like, holy shit, it's so uptight, I guess. I don't know a better word to use.
It's called Doodles with Noodles. And while it looks like another animated show, it actually isn't. This is just the only art we had on short notice. Doodles with Noodles is actually a live-action puppet show in which our very own Ethan Nicole will teach kids how to do drawings alongside his friend, the puppet, Noodles. Unfortunately, while Noodles is very eager to participate,
today we're going to draw a picture of Donald Trump stepping on the head of Joe Biden. Or today we're going to draw a picture of the Michigan polling stations where they take the ballots and hide them and replace them with Biden ballots. Isn't that going to be fun, kids?
In the drawing process, his drawings never quite turn out the way that Ethan intends. It's an absolutely hilarious concept, and we'll get to see kids actually learn skills that they don't have, while again also being utterly entertained, which is our first goal with all of our entertainment content. Again, we're not making polemics. We're not making Hillary's Hard Drive Part 3, and we're not making Hillary's Hard Drive Part 3, the animated series for little kids. We're also not making, with our entertainment content, we're not making conservative...
It's possible that they're trying to do this the right way, where it's more entertaining and like more actually focused on just like creating a fun show than... That's what he's trying to explain, but I have to see it before I believe it, because just seeing the PragerU disaster.
Christian content that people really want to see.
Yeah, it's gonna be, yeah, that makes sense. It's probably gonna be pictures of like biblical stories and stuff. That's gonna be, I feel like that's gonna be like the main focus, because that's kind of what VeggieTales was, wasn't it? Oh gosh.
Content that has underlying values that conservative Christians all agree upon, but that they actually want to see. Now, with our kids' content, we'll play it much safer than with our adult content. Why? Because you're supposed to give kids a safe environment to be kids. You're not supposed to be challenging kids with radical new ideas. You're supposed to be able to trust your kids in a culture. The left has this phrase, they love to use it, it takes a village, they say, to raise a kid. If that ever meant anything, it should have meant a village is a collection of people who all share common values. It's supposed to mean that any adult can trust their child with any other adult. You can send your kids to school and assume that they're not going to have radical gender and race theories shoved on them. But we don't live in that village anymore. In fact, the tape that we saw today of those Disney employees was a direct response to a bill passed in Florida. They say it's the Don't Say Gay bill. They say that because they're liars. They say that because they like to frame things up so that people won't use their critical thinking and realize what's actually taking place. The bill in Florida is specifically meant to say that very, very young children, the youngest of the young, the kind of kids who might like doodles with noodles or Chilla Time, probably have a right to go to school and not hear radical gender and race theory.
I wish they would be more specific when they talk about, like, what is this what is specifically is this critical race theory that they're teaching to children, or what specifically is this LGBT agenda that they're pushing on children, because they never are specific. They just vaguely gesture towards it without actually really looking into what's going on, I guess. Because I doubt they're like telling white kids to hate themselves and telling kids that they should be trans or that they should be gay. It's like, no, they're probably just raising awareness of, like, hey, what does it mean? Like, what is a gay person? Like, what does that even mean? Is it okay for men to be attracted to men? Is it okay for boys to marry boys? I mean, I feel like saying yes and telling kids yes, that's okay, is probably a good thing. It's not going to turn them gay. It's not going to, I don't know. It's not going to scar them for life. I just don't know what the big fear is. And then also with the critical race theory stuff, I don't think they're actually teaching kids critical race theory and white kids should hate themselves and white kids are the oppressors and stuff like that. Like, there's some bad aspects of critical race theory. I think the whole, like, math is racist sort of thing is kind of dumb. I don't know if you guys have looked too much into that, but I've seen a few things related to that. But I'm sure when they're talking to kids about it, it's literally probably like, hey, black and white people, they're equal. We should not treat anyone different because of the color of their skin, which is something that has been told to people since, like, when I was a child. So, yeah, I have a memory of when I was a kid where, like, I think my music teacher was like, said, like, hey, what's the difference between, like, skin color and eye color? There's not really much of a difference. It's like, oh yeah, I guess. And that, I think that sort of framing is pretty good, but it's not polemical, he says, but the whole thing is designed to be a response to leftist media. Exactly. It's so weird, but it is what it is. But I don't know. That was an interesting watch, right? But hey, it's been about 2 hours now. 2-hour video. That's insane. 2-hour live stream. And I wasn't even going to stream today, but we did it. And I think now I should probably be heading out because I have plans at around 6. So I think this is my cutoff point. This is my bedtime, guys. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I really appreciated all the chat going on, all the viewers popping in and out. I think we were pretty consistently around like 5 or 6 viewers, like 4 to 6 viewers throughout the whole stream, which is pretty nice. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Hope to see you all in the next video, which next stream, next video, who knows? Might be tomorrow, might be 4 months from now. I want to get more consistent though. The suit is going to make me more consistent. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.